Good afternoon, young ladies and young men. We are so happy to have you at Athens State as you participate in this We Teach conference. And I have learned that many of you want to pursue careers other than in teaching. Raise your hand if you plan to pursue a career in teaching. Okay. Okay. Those that did not raise your hand for teaching, medical field, raise your hand. Okay. Business field. So. Not quite sure what field. Very good. Did I omit anybody? If so, raise your hand. Okay, very good. Today we are just ecstatic about having some of North Alabama's finest educators with us today who will tell you a lot about the teaching profession, okay? They'll answer some questions that you have about the teaching profession. And for those of you who don't aspire a career in teaching, I'm sure between the adults in this room, we can give you some good advice, okay? So don't feel left out. I'm going to introduce our panelist. To my far right is Miss Stacy Kirby, who teaches at Athens High School here in Athens, Alabama. When you leave Athens State and you go back to 31, you just keep driving, you'll drive right into a portion of their building. So that's where Athens High School is. Okay. We have Mr. Karl Fernandez, who teaches at Sparkman High School in Madison County here in North Alabama. And his colleague, Miss Erica Temple, who also teaches at Sparkman High School here in Madison County. Each educator will further introduce herself and himself at this time. Ms. Kirby.
They sent out an email at the beginning of the week saying that we can bring our computers and do a PowerPoint, so I did. I've got some people who at least know now. You guys, but I'm the teacher that breaks out in hives in the first place. So for me, I like to have something tangible. What I teach is English, but I think that's what's important. I wanted to just say something that you might remember one day when you decide to enter a classroom for the first time, and encourage you, those of you who do want to be a teacher. This is what's important to me as a teaching mindset. It has to go beyond your contents and practices, and the best advice I can give you guys is be authentic and be real with your students. I think everybody in here is probably in here because you've had a teacher that is amazing, and you want to be just like them, but you can't because you got to be yourself. And there are great ways to know to be yourself and get to know your students. But when you walk into the classroom for the first time, just make sure that you model the things that you thought from that amazing teacher, but you don't mimic that teacher. So I learned that the hard way, and we can talk about that later if you want to. And the other thing I was going to tell you is to make meaningful choices. You can lose a relationship with a student on the phone. So be creative with your classroom management so that you prevent the problem and you don't have to react to it. I would also like for you to think about when you become a teacher, how meaningful is an alphabetized partition notebook with a table of contents to a student's development. These are the things that are important to me because these are the kids that I teach. I give kids pencils every day, and I started doing this 4 years ago. And I brought 200 pencils and told them that on the first day of school. First 100 pencils were gone in about 2 or 3 months. And I stopped and talked to them about the pencils, and that I paid for the pencils, and that I have to go buy more pencils. And out of that second 100 pencils, I kept 73 of them. So students will become more organized and prepared when they want to become organized and prepared. You're not going to force that down their throats. And that praise and compassion goes further to change behavior than punishment and an unbending attitude. That's the only thing that I can tell you as far as being a teacher, is that, you have to know your students. When they walk into your room with their laptops uncharged, what are you going to do? Those are the things that, if you want to ask me questions, that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. Because you need to think about, what's important and focus on the life lesson you're teaching your kid and decide what the consequences of your reaction, if that's worth the lesson that they're going to learn. Make your learning purposeful. Don't give them busy work. And this is really the part I wanted to share, because these kids told me what they wanted me to tell you today. I've been working with since they asked me to do this, I've been talking to my kids in my class about what I should tell you guys. And this is Tiara, and she's one of my students in the 9th grade. She walked in my classroom and informed me that no uptight lady was going to make her read a book because no one ever had. And now I'm her teacher mentor, and she does very well. And these two students, I went back and forth with the student on the top right for 12 weeks, and he never had higher than 62 in my classroom. And he hated me. Oh, he hated me. I dreaded that class. And now he tells people that he's going to marry me one day. Not marry me, but he's going to be the reverend that presides over the wedding, if that makes sense. And he tells everybody if they're failing a class that they need Miss Kirby. And that's, focus on your victories. This is a profession that there's a high burnout right now. We get tired because of the kids that tell you, no one's ever made me read a book, and I'm never going to, you can't make me. And the kids that don't even do anything but sleep in the class all day long. But now I've got Justin, who tells me he's going to be the reverend in my wedding one day. And then we have Isaiah, who is one of my current students right now, who just told me that I'm a stupid redneck. This is the words that came out of his mouth. When are you going to leave me alone? And Isaiah passed the class with a 65 first semester, and I patted him on the back the other day. I said, "Isaiah, you've got a D." He goes, "I got to get that grade up." And then I told them 2 days ago that he had a C. He says, "Miss Kirby, I'm going to have a B." So lowered expectations should never be an accommodation for students. And they won't believe that they can be successful until they know that you believe in them. 2 things. I'm sorry, I know this is a panel discussion, but this is the way I work best, and they told me I could. 2 of the best quotes I've ever heard, the best advice I've ever been given, is from my mentor teacher, the teacher that I mimicked instead of modeled for a long time until I learned better. And she told me 2 things. She says they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And then she told me that we all create our own weather. It doesn't matter what goes on in that classroom. You are in control of how you react to it. And I think that you guys will just, that's not me, that's wisdom given to me. If you guys can just remember that, then you will love every day that you teach and be excited for it. So that's me. So if you have any questions later, that's what I would love to talk to you about.
You guys are excited to be here because I heard it in your voices. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Karl Fernandez, and like I was introduced, I do work at Sparkman High School. I'm in the science department. I currently teach honors anatomy and physiology and the human body systems course. But in my repertoire of courses teaching in the science field, I've also taught forensic science and AP biology and marine science. Do we have any future science teachers? No. 3? Couple things, even those who didn't even raise their hand, what's really important to note if you're going into a specified field within teaching, and before before I move on, I would like to say Ms. Kirby really opened up wonderfully well, because it doesn't matter what field or subject area you're teaching, there's a lot more that transcends your subject matter in the field of teaching. And she spelled it out wonderfully well. You really do need to know your students on a personal level, and they need to know they care. But speaking on the science area, something that probably would help you going into that area, or even any other field, is knowing exactly what you need to get to that point of teaching. Science is very unique in that there are lots of opportunities to teach a wide variety of topics in the science department or in the science field of teaching. And it all depends on what your interests are. For instance, there are 3 areas of degrees that you can get in science. One of them is specifically a physical sciences degree, so either chemistry or physics, if that's your forte. Or you can have a biology degree. The third is a general comprehensive or general science degree, and that allows you to teach almost any science that a public high school would have to offer. So you can start guiding yourselves in regard to what area you want to get into. If you are very strong in physics and chemistry, then that's the area that you would go in, and that would be something that you would teach. If life science is more your area, then biology and a wide variety of other topics like genetics or marine science or forensic science would go under your belt. Things to keep in mind, though, is if you want to teach these wonderful, wonderful science courses, you have to essentially interview the school that you're going to and know your school. On a general standpoint, the smaller school, the smaller the population in the school is, the fewer science courses that will be offered. So you probably will only be offered to teach either a chemistry or physics class and a biology and any variation thereof, like a pre-AP or AP biology. In larger schools like Sparkman High School, the population almost is 2,000 from 10th to 12th grade. We can offer a huge variety of sciences, including forensic science and zoology, marine science and genetics, and AP physics and chemistry, just the normal biology and AP biology, earth science, earth and space science, there's environmental science and AP environmental. So there's a lot of more variety in your teaching if you choose to work in a system that has larger schools. So you want to keep that in mind. That's probably the best route. They say, though, that if you decide to want to get into the science teaching field, to major in comprehensive science, because you become more marketable. You're allowed, because you'll be able to take any science job available. And though that is the best advice, I take heed on that because my background is only in life science, and I was still able to get a job. So you need to be true to your heart and what you have a passion for in regards to the sciences that you want to teach. And what Ms. Kirby had discussed will exude, again, transcend whatever it is that you're teaching. I look forward to answering any of your other questions, specifically for science, or just as a teacher as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you. Well, let's try it one more time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a lot of different schools in the room. I'm kind of curious as to where you all are from. Now, I'm from Sparkman High School. I teach math at Sparkman, and I see my Sparkman group back there. Woohoo, Sparkman. Okay, so where are you all from? What school? Athens High School. Great. Okay, what about you all? Hartsel in the gray shirts? Okay. Are you all Hartsel as well?
No, we're the Limestone County High School.
Okay, good. Limestone County Tech. And you Limestone County Tech as well? Hartsel, Sparkman. Okay, are you all Sparkman in the Hartsel? Okay, and in the blue in the back. Where?
Scottsboro.
Scottsboro. Okay, so all over. So we have a good group, a good mix. I saw a group from Birmingham earlier today. So have you all met different people and have you interacted with each other, with other schools? No? Okay, well, here's your chance. Welcome to the plethora of schools that we have here. Okay, so just as in any group, you know, when you go to a conference, you go to a conference to learn different things. When you're in education, you're going to learn a lot of different things about yourself, about other people. One of the things I want to stress is diversity. That diversity can be a great strength for you. All types of diversity. Now, in the beginning, you were raising your hands in terms of who was interested in education and who was interested in other fields other than education. My first career was not in education. So if you are not interested in teaching at the high school level right now, raise your hand. Okay, there are more people than that. Well, okay, so I was with you in the beginning. My first career was not in teaching. It was in something else, and then I moved to teaching math education. So any guesses as to what I did before I became a math teacher? Computer science? Good guess. Accountant? Good guess. Well, we'll see. I tell my students that all the time. I told them that this morning. They were like, oh, Ms. Kirby, you always say we'll see. Okay, so computer science, accounting, other guesses? Who said engineering? Engineering, okay. Banking, okay.
Cashier.
Cashier, okay. Let's have one more guess.
Politician.
Politician, who said politician? Okay, now politician, that's interesting. This is a question that I ask my students all the time. Guess what else Ms. Temple did? Politician, that's the first time I've heard politician. Why politician?
You seem very, I don't know how to say that without being rude. Like very sure of yourself and you know what you're talking about, like most politicians do.
Okay, well that wasn't rude at all. I appreciate you trying not to hurt my feelings too. I appreciate that. Okay, so all wonderful guesses. One of those was a correct guess. What do you think the correct guess was? Computer science. Be sure, be confident. Very good. Well, close. Engineering, actually. So I'm from Huntsville, Alabama. Grew up in Huntsville, come from a long line of teachers, and so a lot of people saw my personality, saw how I interacted with people, saw my interest in math and my love for math, and they were like, oh, you're going to teach math. And I thought, no, I come from a long line of teachers. I am not going to teach, math. Well, I went to the University of Alabama, got my bachelor's in engineering. And even when I was an engineer, well, let me back up. Even when I was at the University of Alabama, I used a lot of skills that teachers have to use. So I was still developing as a teacher, even though I denied it. And people there said, oh, you're going to be a great teacher. I'm like, I'm not going to be a teacher. I'm going to be an engineer. Well, even when I became an engineer, guess what I ended up doing as an engineer? Teaching. I ended up learning the systems and teaching the managers and their employees the systems. So one day when I was teaching, conducting a training session, preparing for the training session, I said, you know what? I know I want to go back to graduate school. I want to get my master's. So, should I go into teaching? I think I'm supposed to go into teaching. So I followed that passion, and I came back to Huntsville and got my master's in math education from A&M. So like I said, diversity is going to be your strength. Don't be afraid to follow your passion. Those of you who are not interested in the teaching field right now, that's fine. Explore whatever you're interested in. And then, you know, if you find that you're interested in helping other people, that you love what you do so much that you want to explain it to others, or there's something about your field that you want to demystify for others or help others in doing well, pursue that. And you might end up in teaching. Now, those of you who are interested in teaching, like you were the little kid in your bedroom who put the stuffed animals in a row, and it was you, and you gave them names, and you made a roll sheet, and you called roll, and Everything. Okay, so you knew from birth, from the crib, that you wanted to be a teacher. That's great. That's great. Pursue that. Whatever you have a passion in, pursue. And it's going to show up in the classroom. So those of you who are about to graduate from high school and you're headed to college and you're entering the classroom to become a teacher, don't just focus on education, okay? Know that when you're in the classroom, your kids are going to want to know, how are we ever going to use this? Now, I get that all the time in math, right? Why do I need to know how to solve a quadratic equation? When am I ever going to have to take the square root of something? I'll just let my calculator do it, right? How many of you have asked that of your teacher? Okay, see, everybody. The math teachers, we're the ones who the students are like, oh, it's time for math, you know. So anyone interested in being a math teacher? High five, thank you. Okay, we're here, we're here. So you really want to diversify. All of you want to diversify because there are skills, you know, in English. You know, of course, everyone needs to know how to read. Everyone needs to know how to write, how to compose, how to communicate and express their thoughts effectively. But still, students want to know, when am I ever going to have to write an essay, a 5-paragraph essay? When am I ever going to have to do this? When am I ever going to have to use my life sciences, right? So you want to have those experiences to give those real-world, concrete examples for students. And students tend to really, really perk up and listen when you can marry those experiences to what they're learning, right? You're making their education real. So some of the things you can do when you go to college, how many of you are seniors right now? Okay, and how about juniors? Okay, any sophomores? Okay, so a few sophomores. Okay, college is gonna be here before you know it. You wanna do things in college like participate in different organizations, participate in internships. Now, as an engineer, I had to do a lot of different projects with different companies. And I use that every day in the classroom when students want to know, when they're like, oh, okay, I know we are never going to use this. I'm going to ask these people, when are we ever going to use this? And I'll say, well, if you're interested in engineering, you could do this. If you're interested, and they're like, well, we know engineering, we know computer science, we know physics, but what about, I want to become a baker. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, you have to know these different things. You have to know how chemicals work together. You have to know how to balance what you're working with. In banking, of course, you know you need to know money, you need to know time, all of these different things. And you want to be able to make what they're learning real. So that's a way that you can do that. In college, participate in internships. If you can't get summer internships in different places, for example, if you need to work during the summer, volunteer to do different things where you work. Show that initiative because you're developing yourself. And initiative is something that you need as a teacher in the classroom. You have to be a self-starter and you have to be very flexible. So develop that, you know, develop your diversity in every opportunity that you have. When I was in college, I was a resident assistant. You know, that's just something I kind of stumbled upon, but it helped to develop those skills for the classroom. I was a manager at the Student Recreation Center. Again, something just kind of stumbled upon, but it's helped to enhance my classroom experience. I encourage you to not only get your bachelor's, but also get your master's, okay? Because when you get your master's and you specialize in a particular field, you can also teach at the college level. So I've been teaching at the high school level for 15 years and teaching at the college level for 15 years as well. And one enhances the other, okay? And it really helps to bring both classrooms together because the high school students are always thinking about, well, in college, what's my experience gonna be? And because I teach at the college level, I can tell them, and they're listening because they know that I'm doing that at the same time. And then even the college students will say, please go back and tell your high school students this. Do their math, take their math classes early, do this in math. So it's a nice way to bridge the two. So again, diversifying your experience, diversifying your background, okay? Because it can really enhance your classroom experience. All right. Well, thank you for your participation. Thank you for your smiles. And I'd love to answer your questions as they come. Thank you.
Ms. Kirby, what grades do you teach, grade or grades do you teach?
I
covers those seniors. All my courses are mixed classes.
All of mine are mixed. I have algebra 2 and pre-calculus,
Okay, now what grades?
10 through 12.
10 to 12,
Mhm.
okay, very good. Well, we have just heard from the experts. Let's give them another. They have brought a wealth of expertise to this session. Now it's time for the experts to hear from the college students, okay? I want you to turn and talk to your neighbor, and I want you to formulate a question for the panelists, okay? Let's take 2 minutes to do that.
Like take a challenge between theory and college, real job.
Thank you.
About what they said, I can check and see if they were listening, if they learned,
About 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
they may remember something you did.
They might have thought
Okay, it's time for these wonderful, wonderful questions from brilliant high school students. Okay. First, let's ask a question, okay? Right here, what's your name? Caroline, and you're from what school? Athens High, okay?
What is your best classroom management strategies?
Well, I think the most important thing that you can do in the classroom is know their names by the time they leave the room the first day. And it's not that hard. I spend my first day, rather than handing out books, learning about my students. And when you play the game and they're able to, test the teacher on that first day, and you know their name, then you've created a connection. But that's not the most meaningful moment. The most meaningful moment is the second day, when they walk in the room and you go, "Hey, Lucas," and they say, "She remembered me." And you guys know, it's really easy for you to misbehave with someone that you don't know and that you're not connected to. But if you can create that connection, classroom management and the caring attitude, you care about them, they care about you. Classroom management kind of happens.
I agree, and that's one of my personal goals too, is to know a student's name as soon as possible. You can subtly develop a really good classroom management, if you are organized yourself. If the students come into the classroom and they see an agenda on the board, or a bell ringer, some beginning activity at the beginning, that you have, that you're organized, that you have their papers already out on their desk prior to coming in. Those little subtleties in being organized actually tell the student that, hey, Mr. Fernandez has it going on. He knows exactly what he's doing. And that instills a sense of really good classroom management from the very beginning.
Also, in the beginning, what I like to do is put students in alphabetical order, because that helps to learn their names faster for me. And because I'm math, I'm very visual. So they're in alphabetical order, and also I give them student numbers so that they can put the student number on their paper, and that helps me to organize their papers. So that when I need to call on them, I know their name, or I can just quickly glance down. And as Ms. Kirby and Mr. Fernandez said, when you know a student's name, you automatically make that connection with them. And when they see that you have a method of doing things, a method of starting the class, you know, maybe in the same way, not necessarily the same thing, but in the same way, then they have that expectation and they feel a little safe. And if they feel safe with you, then they're more likely to listen to you.
Tell me, I heard you say that you have them number their papers in numerical order. Does that assist you or help you when you get ready to record their grades in your grade book?
Absolutely, absolutely, because you never know how many classes you may have depending on the school system you're in. You may have 6 classes at one time, you may have only 3 or 4 classes at one time. And you might have 30 to 35 students in that room. But it's faster, again with the engineering background, it's faster to put papers in numerical order than in alphabetical order by the last name.
But also that same strategy is a good tactic to get rid of your personal bias against students. So if you don't have a name associated with the paper, you have a number, you can grade objectively rather than subjectively. And we as teachers are very, very human, and we may play our favorites. And if we know who our favorites are, we have just the natural subtlety to overlook maybe this question. But with that same question with another student who is always rude, who's always this, we may pick and prod a little bit more on their papers. And that's just, we're just human.
We don't do that.
No. No,
And
we
it,
don't do that.
and it helps when the students know that you are trying to remove bias
Right.
as you grade their
So
papers.
it's about being fair.
Yeah.
Very good question. Okay, next question. Okay, young man.
Okay. What all would you have to do to be certified and be able to teach AP?
You have to have you absolutely have to have your master's degree. That's, as regards to certification, of course you have to been teaching for some time. But definitely the main crux would be your master's degree in that field.
I actually don't have my master's degree, and I teach AP. It is always best to have your master's. I had small children when I went back to school. It's my second career. So I'm still working on my master's, and it's a slow going when you've got 2 little girls to take care of. But the only true requirement is that you become AP certified. Most schools, with some exceptions, just based on a case-by-case basis, would want you to have, because since AP is supposed to model a college-level class, and you have to have your master's to teach that college-level class, that's the reason you usually see that. But actually, the only qualification is that you become AP certified through the AP institutes. So
And it's a week-long training.
And also what administrators like to see is that you have a willingness to learn, a willingness to expand your exposure to things, and a willingness to reach students where they are. Because part of the AP philosophy is not just honors level students should take AP, but all college-bound students should have at least one AP class so that they get that exposure. So administrators like to know that you have a willingness to meet students where they are, to bring them to where they need to be at the AP level.
Another question. Young lady here in the green.
What made y'all decide to teach the subject that you do?
Okay, we'll go down this way. Well, again, with my background, it was just that natural connection. And I love math, and I find it very interesting, so.
Same thing, it was a passion. I've always had a passion for science. I was always good in science. It made sense to me. It was something that was very, very natural. So I've been wanting to teach science since I was in elementary. So this was something definitely I was born into.
And this may be the strangest thing you'll ever hear, but I stunk at English in high school. I have a processing disorder, I'm not dyslexic, but it's got some of the same characteristics. So I didn't read on grade level until the 5th grade. And writing and reading were very difficult for me. I always read slower and struggled. But then I got my, this is my second career as well, and I got my confidence because I was so scared in high school. I was scared to speak out. I was scared the teacher was going to call on me. I became really good at faking it. So I got my confidence in the real world once I got out of school. And I ended up in Birmingham rewriting the writing of these really rich dudes who couldn't write. And I was like, I can do this. I've never considered being a teacher because it was so hard for me. And so I went back and I got my teaching degree, and I chose English because I enjoyed English. That's one thing I would tell you. Don't just go for something because it's easy for you. If you love art, or if you love to read, but you had been terrible in English, which was the case in my case, just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not worth doing. And so I followed my passion, but I had to discover that passion, because I thought that for something to be, your calling, you had to be naturally good at it. And I'm not naturally good at it. I'll be honest, I'm a disaster at reading out loud. Utterly a disaster. It's a lot of work. It's still a lot of work for me. But I think I don't get the answers right all the time. But I think there's something to be said for when you turn to a student and you go, I missed that too. Because I don't get it right all the time. And we're all human. So I love it, but I never thought I'd be doing it when I was sitting where you sit.
Another question? Okay, let's have the young man over in the burgundy shirt.
What's the last thing you want to happen when it comes to a relationship with you and your siblings?
I'm sorry.
What was your question?
The last thing you want to happen when it comes to you and your relationship with your students?
The last thing you would want to happen, like what we would consider to be terrible?
Yes.
Whoa!
I would say if they never had a sense that I cared about them in my classroom. Now, for math, some students love math, students feel the way they feel, but if in my presence and in my classroom, they never felt safe or appreciated or seen, I would hate to have that happen, because they may or may not love the math. They may learn just a little bit, but I'm there to nurture and to develop them, so I hate for that to happen.
I would agree. I've had my first year teaching, had a student in my marine science class who, for whatever reason, did not like me from day one. And she was very vocal about not liking me, and said it out in front of me, in front of the class. At the time I had students do journal writing in my classes, and she wrote down 2 pages worth of foul language. I was cussed out. And the typical response that most teachers would give in this particular situation was to immediately go to administration. But I absolutely cared for all of my students, and I still do. And based on talking from other former teachers of hers, this is the route she tends to go. So going to administration would be a repeat of something that obviously wasn't working to begin with. And every time something negative came out of her mouth, and it was very, very hard, something positive came out of mine in return. And it was literally, I love you, I still care for you, but let's try to do this way. And I'm glad you shared your feelings and your thoughts about me. Quite frankly, we are all entitled to our opinions, but I still love you no less. And as hard as that was to speak those words when someone is berating you every single day is tough. But it was definitely confirmation that I truly care for my students, and I will go in that in that direction for them.
We have time for 2 more questions. Let me get someone from the back row. The young lady in the middle, right here, yes.
How do you know that your students are actually learning rather than memorizing and regurgitating it on paper?
Okay, let's let only 2 panelists answer the remaining questions, so we can try to get more questions.
Well, if you're an effective teacher, you're not asking them questions that answer something that you've given them. Never should you, and I teach language, so it's a little easier than math, because math, it's the right answer and the wrong answer. But it should be about application. You present them with a skill, you present them with a concept, and they have to demonstrate that they understand that concept. And if they're able to regurgitate, then you're doing it wrong.
And also asking how and why, because you want them to ask, what if, what about, how come? And if you ask them, then you know, and if they can explain and apply, then you know that they're learning.
Question? This young lady with Chevron.
What made you decide to teach high school versus elementary?
That's not good, I've never taught them. I don't like kids. I don't like kids. They're gross. They pick their noses. They don't wash their hands. Never been so happy that my kids are like, I'll be glad when my 10-year-old's playing. She's like this. I love them so much more now. I'm not gonna lie.
Sometimes they pick their noses and then they put it in their mouths. I've seen that in schools. Utterly gross.
I think that happens at high school too.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, right here.
What is the hardest part of transitioning from like learning the theory of teaching in college to actually teaching?
That's a very good question.
You improve every time you do it. So even now, after teaching for 15 years, if I'm given a new course and, I understand the material, but communicating it is something different, you always think about, if I had to learn this, if I'm the learner, what are my questions going to be? So you start there, and every time you teach it, every semester, you'll improve. And get feedback from the students. What worked, what didn't work.
I'm easier around even just pure passion. If you really have a passion to do whatever it is that you'd like to accomplish as an educator, sometimes that will guide you, and there won't be this big transition. It just is because you have that passion for it.
Okay, let's give Ms. Temple, Mr. Fernandez, and Ms. Kirby a round of applause.